During early development of Fallout 76, a much different system of mutation was proposed for the game that was inevitably cut. This system featured multi-stage cosmetic changes as well as different stat buffs and debuffs. Today we're going to take a look at this awesome piece of concept art and analyze what the previous proposal would have been like. The first thing we see is different stages for a super mutant player progression with 4 different tiers. The first tier being a normal human, who would neither benefit nor be burdened by any mutation. The diagram states that if a player were to contract a mutation they didn't want, or just wanted to remain mutation-free, they could complete some sort of quest to remove said mutation. Next we have Stage 2, which would change your skin to a green color. You would also have the option to start a quest to make this mutation permanent. On this tier you would get buffs to strength and endurance, and would still be able to use all your normal gear at the cost of reduced intelligence and agility. On Stage 2A, after mutation has become permanent, the player features would change even more and they would become taller, and the ability to use equipment will have been lost. It can be assumed that the further transformation would lead to more pronounced buffs and debuffs. Also, the art indicates that AP would be consumed as well. Finally, on Tier 3, the player will have fully transformed into what looks like a super mutant behemoth of some type, being even taller and more muscular, with even higher stat buffs and debuffs, perhaps with a special ability or attack or something along those lines. It would have been very interesting to see what the game would have been like with these types of mutations. Next, we have a very similar setup with a different mutation progression system. This time, it is what appears to be called a super mole rat. I guess this is a big disappointment to anyone who dreamed of being one of those rat bastards in a Fallout game. Thankfully, your dreams have been shattered very early in the development of this game. Most of the progression would have been very similar to that of the super mutant, with the exception of the buffs and debuffs, opting to buff perception and endurance and reduce strength and charisma. The player would have become pink and started to adopt a more mole rat-like appearance, eventually becoming some sort of giant mole rat in Tier 3. I'm glad we didn't have to see that in this game. Next we have a 3-tiered progression that would be in addition to the first set of mutations. It seems like this could have been a potential endgame system for mutants. Tier 1 indicates a base AP consumption and stat buff. Tier 2 has reduced AP and increased stat buffs, and Tier 3 has max reduced AP costs and max stat buffs. Visually, we see mutants will grow even larger and start to have glowing pustules. The super mole rat progression looks similar in nature, with the rat bastard growing larger and also sporting some pustules. Next, we have a concept that elaborates more about what would trigger a mutation. Tier 1 would have been triggered by environmental factors like radiation, a poisonous plant, or a diseased animal. Tier 2 would have had the same triggers but introduced mutation on command, and Tier 3 would have offered exclusive mutation on command without any environmental triggering risks. Next, we have a concept for tier progression branches that states the player could potentially be able to choose how to progress to the next tier, opting for a branch that may bias towards radiation buffs or a branch that favors defensive buffs. This would allow for greater variety of mutations as well as giving the player an additional agency in gameplay. We can see that we have a green glowing pustule mutant on top and a thick chunky boy down below that seems to have some sort of organic armor and a horn on his head. Lastly, we have a concept for what the HUD would look like when consuming AP during mutation. It says triggering a Stage 3 mutation will cause a slow to consumption of AP over time. When AP is expired, the player will revert back to Stage 2. When in Stage 2, AP will replenish like normal, as it is in normal gameplay. The type of mutation and what tier you are at will determine how quickly you spend AP while in Stage 3. Overall, this mutation system reminded me of the Skyrim Vampire Lord system, where you make a progressive change into this completely different creature if you choose not to address the vampirism. This must have been where the artists' heads were at when making this concept. It's very interesting to say the least. While I'm not sure how this would have turned out, with such an aggressive and seemingly permanent effect on gameplay. However, it's fun to speculate. Could you imagine if like half the players were running around as little mini behemoths and giant pink rat bastards causing all sorts of mayhem and ruckus? I don't know, it seems a little bit too much to me, and hopefully we never have to meet any of those giant mole rats in our travels. Yuck.